Hello, welcome to another video. Today, I'll be attempting to put some ideas forwards on temporal storms, improvements, reworks, or just generally making the mechanic more enjoyable and purposeful in the game of Vintage Story. So first thing is I want to get this out of the way because, we gotta set a ground or forefront. Tyrion himself has said the game is hardcore, or at the very least unforgiving is listed on the website. So when I make my suggestions for temp storms, I'm referring to the standard game mode, aka the intended purpose of Vintage Story. This is important because there will be plenty of people who want temp storms to be bypassable, or you can camp them out because it's for the casual and easy players. But my argument for that is that that's not the point of the game. You can customize the game to how you want and what your intent is, but when I'm talking about the standard game mode, I'm talking about what the game is meant to be or should be. And if you don't like that, that's fine. But I don't think that any individual person's personal playthrough should warrant what the game's artistic vision is. Alright, now that's out the way, let's get to the point of a temporal storm, or how it serves as a mechanic now. Currently, temporal storms act as a timer, similar to how winter acts as a timer to get some food stored and prepare with high clothing. Temporal storms are more like a DPS or equipment check. Currently, right now, you get your first temporal storm like a dozen days in or so. The minimum 9, but that's on average it's going to be 15. But I'll say a dozen because it makes more of an impact the earlier you get it, because you don't really have the time to prepare if it comes faster. And currently, you can get a light or a medium storm the first time. This is a big issue for medium specifically, because mediums can get up to tier 4 spawns, which will be able to one-tap players in that are either not very fed well or just in really shitty armor, which is a big issue because it seems very unfair if you basically, for the first time you experience mechanic, you can just get one-tapped and death cycle looped, and you don't really know what you're doing, which is my first big issue, is that temp storms should always be light the first time around. So the first storm should always be light because you're only going to get tier 3s, which means low tier armor or being eat will make you a 2 to 3 shot, so you always have a chance to get away. Obviously, it's still going to be difficult and hard and hurt, but you do have a chance, and that's kind of the thing that I want to get put down, is that it's fair enough that you have a chance, but it's also still very difficult that you have to fear a storm. Which is another important part, is that storms should be scary. They should not be something that you want to experience. They should be a burden, a tough thing, something that you have to face and are fearful of, because it adds to the story that you kind of live in this desolate world that was befallen through horrible events. And if storms aren't a reminder for that, you're basically just playing Minecraft now. If you don't have this great cataclysmic event, you're playing Minecraft. You don't have the things that make Vintage Story as unique as it is, because these overbearing driving forces just don't exist if storms aren't scary. Which is where bunkering becomes an issue. Bunkering currently is completely safe. Until you get to super late game, you can bunker every storm. I think for the first year, you can literally bunker every storm with no issue. And that's an issue because ignoring game mechanics means the game mechanic failed, in all honesty. So, how do we fix this? First things first, my main suggestion for this is increase the drain of temporal stability. Make it so that if you bunker, you are going to die, because you are going to lose so much stability. You're going to start taking the poison damage and die if you don't partake in the storm. That, or you have to spam healing, or you have to use a temp gear to regen your health. The reason for this is because it gives people the ability to still camp them out if they want. Those casual players have that option, but they still have to pay a price. It's not free. It also kind of removes the gaminess of it, because it is cheese. You're cheesing a mechanic by making a room where nothing can technically roll to spawn, so you're safe, right? You're basically abusing spawn rules. And I think that can really damage the perception of the mechanic, because when the go-to method for a certain piece of content is abuse how the game works so you don't have to engage with it, it kind of drags down that mechanic, even if the mechanic has potential or could be a fun and interesting mechanic. So, Higher Drain can help fix this. With also the new healing changes, you won't be able to spam heal. You would have to use a temp gear, which might be too far, but personally I think it's fine that a player has to use a temporal object to deal with a temporal storm. It kind of fits. So I'm for that, but I understand if the devs would make a decision to let you heal while taking poison damage. Next is how the spawns work. So temporal storms currently spawn in like a wave mechanic, which I think is a good thing. It makes it so an active player can manage a temporal storm. Having to fight like 3 to 4 enemies all between tiers 0 and 4 and like a heavy storm, that's pretty manageable. On average, you're going to be getting like a 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, the 4 is going to be the hardest one, but it's easy to kill a 1 and 2 tier pretty easy at like any point of the game, especially in heavies. You're going to be like probably in the Bronze or Iron Age at the time you're getting heavies. So it's pretty manageable, and I think an active participant of the storm won't actually struggle that much because it's a wave base, so you're not going to get overwhelmed, and it also lets people have the option, if they are going to be getting overwhelmed, to retreat in their house. You can play it more safe. And while it makes it so you're kind of sacrificing like loot opportunities or more stability regained because you might have to pop a temp gear if you camp for too long, it gives the player some level of options and doesn't completely force them to partake in a storm or completely avoid them. There is a problem, and it's that no matter what we do, no matter what the mechanic is, it's a sandbox game. There's always going to be cheese, and I understand that no matter how good a mechanic is, people will camp it out. People will make the perfect bunkers. People will build systems to cheese things, make like 1 pixel wide gaps that they can poke through so that they can regain stability or something. And I think that's fine. I think there's really nothing you can do about it as a designer. If you want the game to be open and sandboxy, that's kind of what you just have to accept is going to happen. And honestly, that's fine. If someone wants to go through the effort of making a pixel-perfect design where nothing can spawn on them and they're completely immune to everything and they're having to abuse all these mechanics, you're kind of cheating yourself out of an experience. And honestly, if that's how you feel about it, you might as well just turn temp storms off. So whatever. Next thing is, temp storms don't really reward the player for participating. Even now, there's much better ways to like get what should be unique to temp storms. So for a long time, the ability to farm or like obtain Jonas parts was kind of locked behind temp storms because two-head drifters would drop Jonas parts. So you'd either have to like go risk your life ruin hunting, or you would have to wait for a temp storm, and then you could go out and try to find a two-head and get some Jonas parts, which was pretty good actually. It's very interesting that if you wanted to find these late game pieces of content, you have to partake in the hardest part of the game, quote unquote, which I think was a good thing. But the issue now is that now with the additional enemies, obtaining temporal stuff, I guess, is easy now. You can make a mantle farm. You can make a little safe mantle farm and farm all the temp gears, all the rusty gears, all the Jonas parts to your house for tent. So temp storms kind of lose that impact that they used to have, because nowadays you can get Jonas parts willy-nilly, really easily. So obviously, I think the rewards are the least important part of a temp storm because they have this more thematic and more story relevant feel to them. But I will put some ideas forward. So my first one is have it be like a Terraria key system where two heads will drop a key or something like that, and you can open like a chest, like in Terraria, like the shadow chest, or like the golden chest or whatever, things like that. Obviously, this is a really gamey, and it's kind of silly because we have things like ore bombs which can blow up any object in the game besides the mantle. And it would be really silly if there was these 196 tool tier chests all over the place, things like that. It would be silly. I would understand with like maybe with the dungeon adding mechanic, at the end of dungeons there'll be chests that you could use those keys on, and you know there's possibility here, but it might not be perfect for Vintage Story. My next suggestion is going down the abiotic factor route. So the abiotic factor has a very similar mechanic to temp storms, where the area will have like an event where you get like an invasion of certain enemies that you usually won't see, and you can choose to deal with them. You can choose to camp in your base and whatnot. And it even combines the Terraria thing where like you can get like a unique key and stuff to like open chests in the world. But anyways, um, what I like about the event factor thing is that it adds enemies you probably won't see, and it adds loot you probably won't see. So it does feel very exclusive to the events, and it makes the player feel like they have to go out in those events, even though they can still camp it, which is, I think, kind of what temp storms are trying to be, but they fall so flat because of how much time it takes. And then my last suggestion, which is very simple, it's just increase the numbers. Just give us more loot. Like just make it so we get double drops. Make all the drops double during a temp storm. Really lazy. Probably the worst of the suggestions I can give forwards, but it's something. It's an improvement in my opinion, at least. And yeah, and I guess the last thing about temp storms that I think is an issue is they take too long. Even fighting them or like hiding them out, they just take forever. Temp storms. I don't want to have to do the same piece of content for 8 minutes straight plus. Or I don't even know. Like at very late game, I'm sure temp storms can last like maybe 20 minutes, which is ridiculous. Like temp storms should at like maximum be a 5-minute activity. So that's my final thoughts. If you have any other temp storm suggestions or things, let me know. If you think that temp storm should be completely overhauled and not even be like a timer or a fear mechanic, let me know. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope this has inspired you to think about Vintage Troy and what kind of game it is and what kind of game it should become. Alright, thank you for watching. Bye-bye!